Good morning. If you would please rise and join me at the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lights on, everybody. Thank you for coming, everyone. This is our Board of Commissioner meeting. It is Wednesday, August 14th, 9:01 a.m. Do I have any amendments to the agenda this morning?
I have two.
Ms. Schmelzer.
One is I would like to add the agreement for Sint, that is between Curry County and Coos. And then the other one is an appointment for Commissioner Boyce to Advanced Health Care.
Okay, where do you want to put those? And
How about just after like 6 H&I?
okay,
I have none, Mr. Chair.
so H will be Sint.
Yes. And J will be appointment to Advanced Health Curry CAC.
Okay. Any others? Hearing none, do I have a motion, please?
I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Second, Chair Pash.
Any further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes?
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Because we have our sheriff standing in the hallway, and I'd like to not leave him standing there, I'd like to do the presentation before we do our public comments. Is that all right, Sheriff? I see you have someone behind you.
You want to do the moment of silence?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry, Commissioner Boyce, go ahead first.
We're going to interrupt Sheriff just for a minute, if we can. Great sadness. We lost a wonderful Curry County citizen a few days ago, John Mathers. Just a great person. I know you were friends with him. His father was the county clerk here back in the 60s and 70s, B.I. Mather. And I remember as a kid, he always had this strap around his glasses. I don't know why that was noteworthy, but something kind of different. But he was a great public servant, raised a wonderful family here. B.I. stood for Bernard. I can't remember what his middle initial was. Anybody remember B.I. Mather? Sheriff might, but no. What was it? John? Thank you, Mr. Hall. Great to have my memory jogged there. I went to school with John's sister, and wonderful intellectual family. So, moment of silence, if we may, Chair Pash, for John Mathers, and sadness for his family. Appreciate that.
I personally knew John as well, and actually Bonnie, my wife, knew him better than I did, but I can remember seeing him running through the fields a year ago chasing a cow at his age, running full bore.
You know, I just talked to him on the phone 2 weeks ago about his losses on his livestock.
Sheep,
and,
yeah.
Yes, and it's very sad on that, too. Hopefully
So
that didn't contribute.
Sheriff, if you would, go ahead and do your presentation first, and then we'll get to public comment. Morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brad Alcorn's with me. He is now a reserve K-9 officer, and he's going to be helping us with our K-9 program. Since he has extensive training and experience with K-9s, where he used to work with in Fresno PD. When I say presentation, it's not like we're going to... When I say there's going to be a presentation, it's not like we're going to have a dog come in here and take a bite on somebody or anything like that. It's basically more of an update of where we are at this time. And I'll have the K-9 deputies, the handlers, come in and speak about their dogs, introduce you to the dogs. But please do not try to get up and pet the dogs or anything like that. They're working tools, working dogs, and that type of stuff. When they're in uniform and in their patrol cars, they're focused on what they need to do, not on, being a pet. So Like I said, we have 2 dogs. With the support of the commissioners, we couldn't have been more pleased with that support when you preloaded some funding for us, which allowed us to get a little bit further than what I expected to be at this point. We sent our deputies down to Vegas, where the one dog came from, basically where we got him from. I think he was imported out of Mexico, but his name is Axel. He's a Belgian Malinois, and people call them Malin Gators because they got teeth and they like to bite. But he's a very friendly dog. He's going to be a huge asset to our community. The other dog is a lab. Now this dog, you have no idea what you got when you guys supported this dog, because he is a FEMA dog. He's already certified in searches for any type of disasters. He can go into buildings or rumble anywhere, like an accident where a car people get ejected from cars and we don't know where they are. He can find those the people. So that dog is the only dog in in Oregon that I know of, and Brad will testify to it too, that is a FEMA dog and dual certified in narcotics. Both dogs at this point are certified in narcotics detection. The one dog, Axel, he's still waiting on to go over to get certified in the state of Oregon. He did all this training in Nevada. But what I would like to do is I'll have Brad come up and have just a quick little talk about his knowledge and what he's seen so far with our canine program. Brad?
Morning, everybody.
Morning, Brad. How are you today?
This room brings back a lot of memories.
Yes, sir.
Spent some time there. So I'm really excited about this program. I'll talk about the first canine team, which is Dave and his dog, Stryker, the lab. The sheriff really had some forward thinking when he latched onto this dog, because we have a resource to put in place in our community that if there's a tsunami, if there's an earthquake, if there's a industrial accident where we have a building collapse or a logging accident or some type of industrial accident where there's a mining accident, we have a dog now that we can bring in that's certified, that will find human beings well ahead of the other resources that are coming from the federal side. We've got that resource here in our community right now. And we can help our neighboring counties too with that resource. And I went with Dave Monday, and we got that dog certified in Medford as a narcotics detection dog, and he worked flawlessly. It's a great team when it comes to narcotics detection. So very, very, very proud of him, and I don't know of any other dual certified canine team in Oregon that's FEMA and narcotics detection. So we got a lot of bang for our buck with this dog. We really did. So in fact, why don't we bring him in, Sheriff, and
Mr. Alcorn? Is that, so FEMA, search and rescue,
yes,
and narcotics,
disaster
all three?
rescue and narcotics.
That's
detection.
amazing.
So this is
Morning.
Deputy Rochelle and Canine Stryker. You'll see the dog has a lot of high drive and energy, and this is like I said, this is a really unique canine team. And I'll let Deputy Rochelle tell you a little bit about his dog and the relationship he has with his dog.
You have to come over here to the mic.
Stryker's 5 years old. I know when we were talking about the program, I told you about him. I worked him as a FEMA dog for the last 4 years, and like Brad was saying, he covered everything that the dog can do on the FEMA side, and we just got certified on Monday in narcotics, and that went really well, and we're very excited about that, and we're just ready to roll and make
Great.
things happen. And
I'd like to say this, I'm excited because this board has become proactive on this, and it's nice to see a board get behind an action like this, get behind the Sheriff's Department, and be proactive in the community. To have the foresight to do this, Sheriff, I'm thrilled to be involved in this, and I wish you the best with it.
And what beautiful white teeth that dog has.
what?
I say, what, the teeth. I just paid a fortune to get my dog's teeth cleaned.
He's a good boy.
So the next canine team is Deputy Teeter and Axel. The sheriff talked about him a little bit. So Axel has certified in narcotics detection. That certification is in place right now. We are near going and getting the certification for protection. But I want you to understand, protection is different. A protection dog is different. A patrol dog is different. There are other pieces and other moving parts that come into play before we go out and do that. There's a tactical side of things that really needs to get dialed in. This is a sheriff's department's dog. So this dog is going to be interacting with deputies in tactical situations, interior tactics, exterior tactics, that all of our deputies need to be on the same page tactically. And you know, we need to do some more scenario-based training with the dog in certain situations so that the machine is functioning on the same page. And that's what we're doing now. We're incorporating that training. We're showing the lethal force component, because a lot of times when our deputy is handling the dog, he doesn't even have a gun in his hand in a critical incident. He's relying on everybody else around him. He's handling the dog, and the dog is being used as a tool to locate and or apprehend. So it's a little bit different, and it takes a little more time to get on point. I saw the dog work yesterday. The dog is very highly driven. I was very impressed with him. I've been around some very experienced dogs, and I'm going to tell you right now, I have a lot of confidence in this dog, and I have a lot of confidence, Deputy Teeter, in this team. So we're a couple weeks away, probably, maybe a little bit more, and getting him up to speed. There's still some equipment and some other things that we need to bring into the equation, but we're getting there. So, yes, ma'am.
I'm just curious, how long can we expect the dog to be functional? I know he's 5 years old now, and...
Well, in my department, we had a SWAT dog, and our SWAT dogs in our department are, you know, that's a big agency, and SWAT team is utilized on a regular capacity. Mm-hmm. The dog retired after 12 years of service, so he worked for 12 years. He's 14 years old today and still alive and functioning. So, you know, a lot of it depends on what the dog's exposed to. A lot of it depends on, you know, how much the dog has worked. But my dog worked 8 years. That was his limitation. You know, like I said, there are others that go 12, 14 years. So it really just depends on you know, the
So when you say
exposure.
12, 14 years, we've got a 5-year-old dog here, so we're saying 12, 14 years from...
Oh, especially on a narcotics detection dog, because they're not exposed to the physical rigors of patrol. A patrol dog is going to be exposed to a lot more, you know, physical requirements than a narcotics detection dog.
Okay, thank you.
When we say 5 years old, we're talking about the Labrador that you just saw. He actually is an employee of ours because he belonged to the deputy. The only money that we put into him at this point is for the training. When we sent him down there, we paid for, you know, the training, the per diem and all that to get him down there and back. Now, this other dog you're going to meet is Axel. He's less than 2 years old. He's got a long long life ahead of him with working with us. So we're very excited about it. In fact, he hasn't even been rolled out yet. He was called to assist the Brookings Police Department on a traffic stop. They suspected that there may be drugs in the car. The dog showed up, alerted on the car. Then they searched the car, found methamphetamine and heroin, and also some evidence of identity theft, which is going to help solve several other cases. So these dogs are going to help us immensely on our cases and the drug problems that we have.
One more question. When we work with the Brookings Police Department, which is great, do we have some sort of an MOU where they help with the financial
No.
part of that? Just
They
curious.
have their own dog. They have a protection dog, but it's not drug trained. I think they're working on trying to get their own drug dog as well. Our job is basically when we deploy the dog, we will assist any other agencies that takes, you know, a bite out of the crime when we find drugs, because the drugs aren't just central to whatever they're at. They're central to the whole county. So if we help another agency, that's just all the better.
Oh, I totally agree, but I think we're kind of in this together and need to help each other financially, so just saying.
Right, and just to follow up on what the sheriff said, there's a huge nexus between narcotics and identity theft and property crimes and even violent crimes. And when our dog goes in, like Deputy Teeter's dog did the other day, and it alerts to the narcotics, and then we find all of this evidence of mail theft, and some of that mail's from Harbor and other locations in the county, you know, we're really having an impact on not just the drug trafficking, but the other crimes.
So the criminals have no boundaries, or
They don't.
what you're saying?
They don't.
Okay.
So if we can't bring in Deputy Teeter and Axel.
Sorry, I just have lots of questions.
Morning, Deputy.
So we'll have Josh tell you a little bit about his dog and his relationship with his dog.
You want to step back here or I can just do this.
Beautiful markings.
So, can you hear me?
Hey, you're good. Yeah.
So this is Axel. He's about 17 months old now. We bonded pretty good. He's a lot different than he was when we first got him back in beginning of June. Like they said, we went down to Vegas for about a month. Down there, he learned how to smell the odor of narcotics, and he learned how to do the patrol portion. We did a lot of urban tracks out in the industrial part of Vegas. We did a lot of building searches, because our ultimate goal when we deploy him on that stuff is get the bad guy to surrender. So he learned how to do all that good stuff. Unfortunately, we don't have woods down in Vegas, so it's a different environment up here. Like the sheriff said, he already found some drugs in vehicles, and he loves.
He's going to read the newspaper.
He's a very hyper dog. So, very friendly, but he knows when to work. He's a working dog. He's not a pet, so he's not going to be out in the public asking for people to pet. So, he's a working dog. We don't want any accidental bites or anything. So,
All right.
And you'll see, one of the reasons we don't like a lot of interaction with a working dog is these dogs have associations with equipment and with uniforms and patrol cars, and you know, there's a reason that 5 of us in uniform can go into interior tactic environment, and the dog stays focused on a suspect and pays no attention to the officers. The dog is actually learning the uniform. He's learning to associate that with the good guys and recognize bad guys. And so when we put the dog in the car to go to work, when we put our uniform on, the dog sees the equipment that comes with it, the dog knows, I'm going to work. So, you know, if there was some sudden unexpected event that were to occur, we want the dog to be focused on that so that Deputy Teeter can target him on the right person and the right situation. So that's why we don't encourage a lot of public interaction when we're working.
Could you, because you've got a lot of experience in this as well, I know, could you explain the relationship between the deputy and their dog personally? Because I know it is an extensive relationship.
It is, and most times before you do anything, before you tell the dog to sit, to stay, to down, there's a bonding period that takes place, and that bonding period can be, depending on the dog itself, it can be up to 5 or 6 weeks before they even want you to go to the school. And all you're doing is you're feeding the dog, you're brushing the dog, you're basically loving the dog. And the stronger that bond, then the more the dog will react to the training, and the more the dog will react to whatever commands you're giving the dog or whatever you're asking the dog to do. You'll see there's guys I know that are Navy SEALs that are dog trainers, and those dogs, they do phenomenal things. They swim for hours in oceans. They go into extremely tight quarters with multiple team members and never have an accidental bite or a diversion. And the reason they can do that is the bond that is developed. And so, you know, those are all things that are works in progress right now. I mean, the dog's getting to know me. You know, we did some stuff yesterday, and we're working on that bond. And
I guess he liked you.
And we're working on that.
Right.
So, absolutely, that's a critical component to this dog's success.
Well, thank
And
you.
you notice that when I petted the dog's going to have to learn who the boss is, because I don't want him biting the boss.
Well, I really appreciate you guys bringing him over. Commissioner, do you have another?
Not
Something?
to interrupt you, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yes, I do. I just want to say congratulations. This is part, and you're volunteering, and so it's becoming, sometimes, aren't you?
Well, I gave you my word, I gave you my commitment, and that stays strong today. I will remain in place with this program as long as I'm needed.
But I know you volunteered a lot, and certainly on our budget committee, and that's much appreciated. Since becoming commissioner, I've met so many people that want to contribute back to this county, that volunteer, and it's really quite motivating. So I want to say congratulations. This is part of Curry County. Instead of lagging behind the rest of the state, it's an example. One of the categories we're starting to lead, and so much appreciated, all of you.
Thanks, guys.
The one thing I do want to point out that we have received quite a few donations since we started this program, and we haven't even rolled it out. To date, we're right at about $25,000 that people donated, and in order to keep this program successful, we're going to be asking, for people who want to donate to the Curry County Sheriff's Canine Program fund, and we'll have some fundraisers at different times. But not only that they're with our donations, but with asset forfeitures and things like that. Once we get rolling, I think the program will pay for itself. But in advance, it wouldn't have happened unless the commissioners supported it the way you guys did, as fast as it has happened. Thank you.
Thank you. How could you not support a face like that? Thanks, guys. I appreciate you bringing them in, and thank you for all you do.
Thanks for
Much
allowing that
appreciated.
extra time.
All right, so we're going to go into public comments. Mary Rowe? Good morning, Miss Rowe.
Microphone on your right.
I'm not technologically adept enough to move.
Just pull it.
Sorry. I'm Mary Rowe, and I'm here to support the declaration that we are in a state of emergency due to lack of housing. Failure to build sufficient housing, continued low wages, and a recent increase in population are contributing factors. Our teachers, social workers, medical care workers, and other professionals are having difficulty finding housing. One example is that our Oregon Department of Human Services Aging and People with Disabilities local office was recently down from 4 eligibility workers to 1. When another worker was finally hired and trained, she then had to terminate her employment due to lack of housing. The one remaining worker could not adequately take care of the survival needs of our older and disabled people. The statistics that we have gathered in the past few years on homelessness in Curry do not reflect the actual number of homeless people. As an advocate who is familiar with certain segments of the homeless population, I'm sorry, I'm having a little seizure here. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry.
You okay?
Yeah.
You don't have to be sorry.
As an advocate who is familiar with certain segments of the homeless population, I can attest to the inaccuracy. When housing is scarce, some unethical landlords do not fulfill their contracts, evict tenants illegally, and regard older and disabled tenants as expendable. Tenants in horrible situations are reluctant to speak up for fear of losing their roof overhead. Many low-income people live in fear of becoming homeless, a fear that all too often is realized. During the past few years, I have witnessed vulnerable elders become homeless, who are not substance abusers and who cannot drive due to disability, and who then sometimes die during the winter. Often such deaths are not covered in our newspapers. Our local safety nets have decreased. Motel rates and state park fees have increased. 2 shelters in our area have closed. Oasis is often full. No extensions are being given for housing choice vouchers currently. Our law enforcement resources have been drained by the effects of our housing crisis. Problems resulting from lack of housing are diminishing the functioning of our schools, libraries, hospitals, and other institutions, and businesses in our economy are adversely affected. One of our subsidized housing complexes has about a 12-year waiting list for one-bedroom units. Please pass this declaration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rowe.
Well said.
Connie Hunter? Good morning, Ms. Hunter.
Morning. Moving as fast as I can. I want to get my 3 minutes in. I'm Connie Hunter, and I'm a proud resident of South Curry County, and I'm here today to congratulate the good work of Curry County Commissioners Court Boys and Chair Chris Pash. $2 million for the emergency department so that we can have emergency department in Brookings, filling the biggest gap in care for our veterans and for our family members and for South Curry County. Thank you for that. You do not know the weight that is lifted off the shoulders of people like myself as my husband and I grow older. Having that emergency department in our backyard instead of 30 minutes away is a life-saving opportunity. So thank you for that. The Military and Veterans Caregivers Hidden Heroes Resolution, amen. Recognize the people that do a lot of heavy lifting on behalf of our veterans. I can't say enough about the work that you've already started to do on behalf of veterans, Commissioner Pash. And so that dovetails into the housing emergency resolution. Commissioner Court Boys, thank you for putting that forward. We've had a long, hard struggle when it comes to just changing the narrative around affordable housing. When we first came forward with the League of Women Voters 3 town halls on, it was supposed to be on homeless resources, but I really talked to the ladies and we felt talking and addressing affordable housing at that time was important. And the fact that you weren't even a commissioner and you attended all 3 of those League of Women Voters housing, homeless resources and housing town halls, not only told me that there was momentum coming forward, but I knew your commitment to the community would take it forward. So I hope that resolution passes today. It certainly will help our veterans, and it's something that I've wanted to see come forward, just that commitment, and then we can go from there. Without that commitment, developers don't know that you're serious, the community doesn't know that you're serious, and funders don't know that you're serious. And then I just want to talk one more minute about the 5-year strategic plan between Oregon Health Authority, ODVA, community providers, and the VA that's that they're forming right now. That essentially came from the platform that we carried forward from our VA Healthcare Summit 2.0, and I thank you both for being at that summit. Appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you. David Barnes? Morning.
Morning, sir. Good morning, Commission. How are you today?
Good, how are you?
All right. I also want to speak about this emergency resolution. I'm just not, I urge you caution, please. You know, an emergency resolution is meant for a true emergency. You know, while people who are underhoused right now, yes, they are facing a sense of emergency, I just think that declaring a housing emergency in Curry County is going to end up being more detrimental than beneficial to this county. I don't see how it benefits us. I think personally, I think it diminishes the emergency clause. I was reading over the weekend and some other things, and I was reading something about the National Alliance to End Homelessness. And, you know, before you declare an emergency, a housing emergency, they have some key questions to answer. First one is, what are the clear, actionable goals that could be formulated in an emergency declaration that could assist the immediate homeless of the crisis in the county? Do we have any, or are we just declaring an emergency? You know, just declaring an emergency doesn't guarantee us federal money. It doesn't guarantee us state money. You know, the feds in the state are looking for us to pony up. Where are you getting the money to put towards the housing problem? I sat through the budget meetings. I know we don't have any extra. You know, so I don't understand that part of it. And, you know, I just, you know, for when Commissioner Gold and Commissioner Boyce, when you took office 2.5 years ago, Commissioner Boyce, this is one of the top items on your list of 19 things that needed to be addressed in this county. From sitting in this room for the last 3 years, 2.5 years listening to it, I see that very little has happened. And your inaction, quite frankly, does not cause a state of emergency for the rest of us. According to the ORCA point-in-time studies that I looked at, since 2017, homelessness is down 20% in Curry County. We went from 170 down to less than 140. It's 0.6%, not even 1% of our population. If you look up the road in Coos County, they have almost 2% of their population. Almost 1,500 people are homeless. Works out to 1.9% of their population. I don't see them out calling for an emergency declaration to have somebody come in and help them. Lastly, my big concern with this is that, sooner or later you're going to call for help and somebody's going to come. And when they do, they're going to take over Curry County. And that is my biggest fear on this, that we keep calling out for help. It just sends a message that our leadership is inept and doesn't know what to do to solve our own problems, that we need to call for help. And I really wish that, you would really consider this strongly and do not do this today, because eventually someone's going to listen to you and they are going to come and help and they're going to take over. And, when that happens, everybody in this county loses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Boyce?
Quick comment?
Sure.
I guess if you're a little girl trying to get ready for school in the back of a car with the trunk open, I guess it might be an emergency. If you're a veteran and you've been homeless for 2 or 3 months, out of options, it might be an emergency. I realize there might be a few people in the county, maybe a reasonable percentage, that think that I'm inept for this challenge. But we're going to move forward, and I think that the help is going to come. And the best job we can do is make the public aware and move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Tim Palmer.
I'm Tim Palmer from Port Orford. I'd like to speak on the same issue. And I agree that housing is a problem here. And I commend the group that came up with our housing plan of 2018. They had some good recommendations there. However, nowhere in that plan was there anything relating to to Commissioner Boyce's recommendation in his resolution in its final 2 lines, which called for the county to be essentially exempt from state and local laws regarding land use. I think you've ruined an otherwise good statement with that. You've sent up a red flag here that's going to result in this measure just being thrown in the trash can. And I urge you not to do that. The housing plan of 2018 says nothing about the proposed resolution, and I quote here that final 2 lines, suspend limiting rules which prevent housing options in the unincorporated areas of Curry County. So those areas, the unincorporated areas, are subject to our zoning now. This was developed in an intensive process over a period of years. It's been in effect for 30 years. It's worked well for our county. The zoning we have in our non-incorporated areas, which this proposal would do away with, has served our residents well. It protects our property values. It addresses the issue of increasing public expense for roads, sewers, water lines, law enforcement, fire protection. We talk about fire, we get apoplectic about fire. One of the key recommendations that people are trying to deal with the fire issue is try not to have more development in fire zones. In fact, 90% of our wildfire prevention efforts, not municipal, wildfire, go towards saving structures. And the zoning we have tends to discourage unlimited development in those areas. We should not do away with that. We should keep that. The current zoning is intended to avoid sprawl. It encourages development in the incorporated communities, which is really the right thing to do if you want to address the issue of affordable or workforce housing in the incorporated communities and within the urban growth boundaries. This is what's important. So let me just kind of wrap up here. Please do not consider those final two lines. I would agree that an emergency from the governor is probably ill-advised. I think they're not going to take you seriously. Every county in the state has its problem. We've had it for 20 years. But I encourage you to proceed to go forward with good proposals that have been made regarding housing. And I guess I'll stop there. I encourage you to address this issue, but forget about this final statement which says get rid of the county zoning, which is...
I can't find that.
Okay, let me quote, Court,
You used
last
the
two
word
lines.
exempt,
Quote,
if I may.
here we go, quote, suspend limiting rules which prevent housing options in the unincorporated areas of Curry County.
Okay, so you're changing it from exempt to suspend, correct?
I'm urging you to drop those two lines from the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Real quick, Mr. Chair, sometimes I had an old friend tell me 2 years ago, try your best not to confuse homeless and housing. They are definitely related, but this is a big, broad picture that we're dealing with here, and it's something we can lead our way out of, and it's a tremendous responsibility to try and find solutions. And I think we started, and hopefully we'll start today. Thank you. That's all I have now.
Thank you. Joy Wolf. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Joy Wolf, and I'm a resident of Port Orford, Oregon, and this is my first time speaking, and I'm very grateful for speaking to all of you today. And I want to start by just saying that I'm pleased to see the positive changes and new ideas that have come forth because of some of the new commissioners, particularly Court Boyce. And for example, I know that Court Boyce had talked about some of the building codes, you know, just trying to help with some of the inaccuracies and you know, code violations. We have a new code officer now, and I'm really pleased about that. My reason today for speaking is about 6D. And I really applaud the research that has been done in helping us understand the housing situation here. It seems to me, that I think, that the problem is you know, you'd mentioned that there are over 10,000 mobile homes and the condition of the housing that the people are living in. And hold on. So it seems to me that the condition of the housing is one of the biggest problems, possibly in addition to the fact that there might not be enough housing. And I live in a rural area down Elk River Road, as you know, and I am thankful for the fact that the zoning is the way it is. It does keep me safe. Tim Palmer did a great job in explaining what it provides. And if we did make this an emergency, I'm wondering, I really don't know the ramifications for that, but is there a way to make it so that the zoning in rural areas are protected and that we could maybe focus on keeping the programs alive that help with the existing housing? In other words, maybe restore or increase the quality of the existing housing so that more people can live in adequate and safe areas, or you know, their existing housing can be upgraded. I assume that making this a state of emergency means that you're asking for funding for certain programs. So that would be my recommendation, is to focus what you're asking to help the people who are already living here in their existing housing, and to maybe keep this in more urban areas. My fear is that living in the rural area, if zoning is kind of willy-nilly, then my safety would be at stake. So that's my concern for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joy.
Mike Burns, please. Morning, sir.
Good morning. Yeah, I came here basically on a fact-finding mission, and Julie has helped me out with regards to the getting this report that Curry County Oregon Housing Action Plan. I guess that was developed by a non-for-profit. It's not a county document, and I couldn't find it on the internet. And then I've got this Homeless in Oregon report, which is also cited in this. The Oregon Community Foundation. And
Can you repeat that, please?
It's basically an opinion that they're using. They have a disclaimer in here on how to house the homeless by Russell Sage Foundation, 2010, and they're using that as the policy framework, which is advanced in this report. Draws heavily on the books and the opinions of those writers. And as much good work as some non-for-profits do, I mean, that they accomplish, I mean, they also have a need to feed their own foundations, and they'll use these reports, you know, to generate more income. I mean, I personally know someone that has benefited from the Oregon Community Foundation. So, I mean, they do good work. But I would like to see that other report. On the veterans, and I have yet to hear this from the horse's mouth, but I've been hearing it this morning from other vets I've talked to that have read this. I've been told that in the chronic homeless of veterans in Coos and Curry County is about 35. And half of those, I'm told, cannot be helped through HUD programs or others because they have either sexual or domestic related charges on their record. So they're not eligible for any kind of federal programs. From my own point of view, as far as affordable housing, there needs to be a bigger focus on paying these folks more money. My neighbor, luckily he's got a job as a guard at Pelican Bay, and he can afford the $1,400 a month he's paying for rent. But he's still scraping by. He's got a wife and 2 little kids, and she's a stay-at-home mom. I think there should be some focus placed on that as well. And
Hey, that focus, can you repeat that just so I need to be a little clear on what you're recommending there? Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
well, more focus needs to be placed on paying these folks more money. The neighbor across the street from me and her husband, she works 2 minimum wage jobs, and he gets a little better than minimum wage at $11 an hour, and they're struggling. They're paying $1,300 a month for their rent. I mean, these are all being driven up.
Sure.
You know, these rental properties are all being driven up by all these other property management companies are the ones that drive the rates of this up. And, you know, I don't know how you're going to get more affordable housing. I can't state it any better than these other gentlemen have already, but they need to do something as far as increasing the wages, because the workers that work here to supply these, you know, services, whether they're working at grocery outlet or the fast food places in town or other jobs, the minimum wage is not enough.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, sir.
thanks.
All right, moving on. We're going to move to consent agenda. A will be the Board of Commissioners minutes from business meeting August 7th, 2019. B is an order, revised job description for our code enforcement officer. And C is to renew Curry Community Health's grant for the juvenile department. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as written.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
I think we have to take a break for the 10 o'clock, and I'm guessing Mr. Dumeyer may go a few minutes, so why don't we take the break a little early this morning, and that way there, when we come back, we can just keep moving right through the action items. So it is 9:44 now. We'll re-adjourn, or we'll recommence this meeting at 9:55. We are in recess. back, everyone. We are back in session. We are back in session, please. Thank you. All right, so we're going to move on with discussion and action items. Discussion and action items. A will be the Rogue Siskiyou Regional Fire and Emergency Training Center, Jared Medumeyer, Emergency Management, and Tyson Krieger, Gold Beach Fire.
Well, good morning. So this morning wanted to present some work that's been done here in Curry County over the last 4 years. I'm going to refer to we quite often, I'm sure, and I want to make sure that it's understood that I'm using the royal we. Chief Krieger with me has done quite a bit of groundwork in building this project up, and I believe it's a great opportunity for this county and for our neighboring counties as well. So we are talking about the concept of the Rogue Siskiyou Regional Fire and Emergency Training Facility. Now, of course, in Oregon, in southern Oregon, we've seen quite a bit of fire on our shores. We've seen, just in the past 2 years, the Chetco Bar, the Klondike, and the Taylor Fire. Combined, there's roughly 400,000 acres of flame between Josephine and Curry County, and that's just in the last 2 years. In terms of overall fire hazard, we tend to get the large fires. Now, this is a map of Oregon west of the Cascades, and you notice the blotches on that map. I want to draw attention to the fact that pretty much north of Roseburg, there's no incidents of large fire in our last 17 years. This goes back to about 2002. As you come down to southern Oregon, notwithstanding the Umpqua National Forest in eastern Douglas County, the history of large fire is right in our backyard. And it goes down, of course, as we get closer to California, they have the same occurrence. We see a lot of this issue. One of the issues that we have, though, is the lack of training available in a regional concept. If you want to get your structural firefighter trained up on things, if you want to get some wildland courses, you have to go out of the area. In fact, I remember as a part of Coos Forest Protective Association, I had to go to Medford a lot for some training. I would have to go to Eugene, whatever was available at that time. So one of the things that's been worked on, Chief Krieger can speak more to it as we go, is the concept of putting together a fire training and emergency facility. The Agnew property on the Rogue River up Jerry's Flat has been identified as a prime location for this facility. There's currently an MOU with Agnew as the group here tries to purchase that land for this facility. It's approximately 150 acres and is probably the most ideal situation for a facility of this nature. The reason it's most ideal is because it gives not only just an opportunity to have the compounds, the burn center, and such for firefighters, but you also have the ability to expand out beyond fire. The ability to do water rescue training with the pond, the Rogue River nearby for jet boat training. You have the ability to house firefighters, incident management teams away from the fairgrounds, which have been impacted these last 2 years with incident management teams coming in and having to take over that complex. This facility would take in the ability to house those incident management teams as we go. It's also centrally located, not just in Curry County, but in terms of our fire history and fire threat, it's central to that as well. From this location with an incident management team, you have the ability to go quickly to Casatna Creek, to Wild Horse, to access the southern portion of the wilderness areas we have. You can get over Burnt Ridge or Bear Camp towards Josephine County. You can go north into the Old Blossom Complex. This is a very central location for our fire management teams. In addition, the size of this property and its location present the opportunity to have helicopters staged. I believe up to 5 Type 1 helicopters are planned to be staged during a fire incident here on the southern portion of this property. We can then store also, during those incidents, retardant, gel for suppression activities. This complex has a lot of promise to it. The fire training facility is intended to have, in this first phases, a burn tower. So these structural firefighters can actually practice live fire on a structure environment without having to wait for a burn to learn to come up, someone to donate them a house. They can do controlled practices and simulations on a burn tower. A commercial kitchen for on-site support. Again, this facility is intended to assist in our emergencies. Staging for multiple helicopters. We talked about 5 Type 1. Those are those big old Sikorskis that you see on the fires, the really beautiful choppers. Again, we talked about incident management teams, ICP. But again, it's also a emergency training facility. This is for law enforcement. They can do active shooter training. The intent is to have a shooting room there. They can do active shooter firearm qualifications. Right now in Curry County, if you want to do firearm qualifications with the Sheriff's Department, the police departments, you go down to Brookings to an outdoor range, and it's not even level. It's at an awful tilt. So the intent would be to have a controlled indoor environment for shooting qualification. An emergency operations center is also planned as part of this construct. That's a place where we can affect finance, logistics, operations, planning, and communications for a large-scale event that affects the county. The ability to do search and rescue with rappel training, with the water rescue that's available with those 2 ponds in a safe, controlled environment, in addition to having the Rogue River right there off the back door, so to speak. Conference rooms, dormitories, so we can bring people from around the region, from Oregon, California, Washington, Nevada, Idaho, bring them here to Curry County and offer training in a classroom environment, and they can stay in our complex. Just like if I were to go to Maryland to take courses through EMI, I would go to their facility and I would stay in their dorms. We would be offering the same kind of abilities here. This is an exciting project. I have a lot of energy to this myself. I'm thrilled that Chief Krieger's done a lot of work here to bring this opportunity to Curry County. There's still a lot to go. What I have brought here to the board today is I've asked for a resolution. I've asked for your signatures of support. As we continue forward with this project, the more people that get behind this project, the more funding opportunities we can have to build this project up. There's already grants that have been taken in on this to start the phase 1 aspects of the project. But this is going to be a very, very large endeavor. Part of what I've just covered is only the first phase of it. We intend to use all 150 acres for emergency training and capability. We intend to be able to use this for our regional benefit, for Del Norte, for Josephine, for Curry, for Coos. We want to be able to bring people here and have the best training and the best trained volunteers and staff in Oregon. There is no other facility like this that is all in one, save perhaps for DPSST, and they're not usually available to come down to Curry County. We have to go to Salem. So again, I'm asking that the board would consider supporting this facility here. Chief Krieger, do you have anything else to add?
Well, just a few things. Going back to DPSST, so I testified in Salem about 2 years ago on this whole concept, and they were very supportive of it. At the time, there was just simply no dollars available for it. However, during that, DPSST actually sent a representative to testify with us that they were in support of this concept training facility in this area. So that was a good feather in our cap now. So like Dumar said here, what we're trying to do now is we're going through, we're not asking you guys for funding. We're asking you for basically a signature and nod of support for this concept that we have here, what we've been working on. It's moving along quite well at this point, but we're going to be going to places like the State Fire Marshal's Office, DPSST, you guys, all of the fire chiefs starting Curry County. This initially started out as a project to support Curry County itself. However, once we started seeing what our options were there in the long run, we decided that this would be better if we take this, build it to where it's very functional and very operational at a county level, and then our advisory board that we're putting together will determine what direction we would want to go from there to be able to add new training. I can't tell you what phase 2 of this would be simply because we haven't determined yet what would be the ideal training, whether it's some more advancement in the law enforcement side, some new stuff in fire side, search and rescue, whatever is trench rescue. The sky's really the limit with the availability of space that you have out there and the need for the training, not only in this area, but regionally also. Not being able to get certain training around here that you have to have. Dumar, he also made mention of the fact that we're looking at concentrating heavily on wildland with this. Wildland training is one of those things that it takes you a long time to get to where you need to be to actually be part of the bigger picture. Anybody can, in a year, they can go out and get their FFT2, which is entry level for wildland. But there's a series of classes and task books, and this is a process that takes an extended amount of time. So it's very difficult for somebody here to be able to travel to Salem or maybe Sisters, or this week they're over in Redmond, trying to grab these little classes all over the place that they're required to have to be able to either be an engine boss, single resource engine boss, crew boss, dozer boss, whatever it is. They have to go through all these task force strike team leaders. They have to travel around everywhere. Being able to do this here, we already have the resources locally here to be able to put on the classes with Coos Forest Patrol and also the Forest Service. This would give us a facility not only to do the in-house class work, but to be able to get out. I don't know how many of you guys have ever tried to weld, but Doogie Freeman told me one time, you can't learn to weld with your nose in a book. You have to learn to weld with your butt in a seat. And so you cannot go out and learn how to fight fire, whether it's structural firefighting or it's wildland firefighting or it's search and rescue, vehicle extrication, law enforcement. You can't learn how to do that with your nose in a book. And the whole idea behind this facility is to make something that is above and beyond what's par for the course in this region or in this half of the country for the most part. We want to make something that's very useful. It's what we need. It's not a bunch of fluff. It's what we need to get the job done and give the proper training and information to our people around here to be able to better support our community.
Thank you. Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned that it originally started out as a Curry County project. Of course, your concept, that your vision started before the big fires, correct?
It did, yeah.
And so I want a clarification on that, and I was sure that you might answer. There's been a lot of behind-the-scenes work on this. Your father, former state rep Wayne Krieger, certainly David Brock Smith, our current District 1 state representative, River Docks, Cam Perry. Can't go without mentioning Summer Madison. The four of us have spent a lot of time on this last couple of months. We have started the process with the governor's office, thanks to David Brock Smith and Wayne Krieger, and we had a meeting there in May. We didn't get to see the governor. Originally, we thought we were going to, but we think the state really would have an inside track, correct me if I'm wrong, to fund the purchase of this property, and that would generate a lot of interest throughout for potential federal funding.
Yeah.
So we're still working with the governor's office. We're still hopeful there. But the team of Madison and you two have been just incredible to work with. And the more people that I talk to about this, the more enthusiasm is growing. Where better than Curry County? Where more appropriate than Curry County? And so I've asked Emergency Management Coordinator Jeremy Dumeyer to give a presentation at one of our last Governor Fire Recovery Council meetings before we give our recommendation to the governor later next month. And so I think the process is moving very well, and really appreciate you two being here. And I'll probably have a couple other questions later. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gold?
When you talked about a big event, it kind of triggered something in me to talk about how your resiliency fire training would, and the county, how the Cape Blanco Airport could tie into that. Is there any tie in there? Because I've heard that the Cape Blanco airport would be a staging area in case of a big emergency.
Actually two benefits to this facility that ties into Cape Blanco. One, the ability to stage helicopters here, those 5 Type 1s. 2, the fact that this is out of most all hazards. You're not going to find really anywhere in Creek County that's out of all hazards. There's something that can always happen. But by and large, this is out of most all hazards. So if you want to tie this into Cape Blanco, pretty simple. First off, the helicopters here, we're outside the fog line, the typical fog line, which if you have a helicopter at Gold Beach Airport, you're stuck in the fog, you're not taking off. This gives us the ability to have those helicopters inland. We can fly off from this location to the fire and affect a good response. In terms of Cape Blanco, this gives us an opportunity to have somewhere to go after a Cascadia type event. So Cape Blanco is recognized as a lifeline on the Oregon coast. There are 3 airports that may or will survive a large catastrophic 9 event. Cape Blanco, Tillamook, and Newport airports. That being said, having talked with the Department of Aviation, they don't have a whole lot of hope in Newport. They think that runway might need repair, so it'll be down for at least the first 72 hours or longer. Cape Blanco is a Navy-built runway with 18 feet of concrete underneath of it, capable of handling a C-17. We can have resources fly into Cape Blanco, hop from there to this facility to offload goods and services. That's an awesome opportunity there. I will say that we own, as a county, it's 64 acres adjacent to the airport. And talking with John Wilson with the Department of Aviation, it would be ideal to take that 64 acres, or a good portion of it at least, and prepare that for staging, for operations. Because right now, Blanco is a runway. You don't have the ability with Blanco to just fly in, unload, have a Chinook sitting there and offload at the same time. We don't have that space, but we have that 64 acres that's flat. We could have the Department of Aviation, the state, come in, clear that off, and have a place to stage stuff.
To finish on that thought, though, I have spoken with people on that, and we do need to add about 400 feet of taxi area in the Blanco ending of the runway. And we also need to have an ILS approach in there. NDB beacons are no longer in service for military, so we would need an ILS approach there.
Yes.
And the FAA would approve that with some minor changes, so we have spoken about that already.
Yes, and actually that's something that John Wilson and I have talked about, is that they want to put a lot more capability to that airport. It's a Class 5 airport.
Right.
Basically single engine and emergency services. But it would take basically what you're talking about, those ILS approaches, a few minor things here and there, to make Cape Blanco a Class 3 or Class 2 airport, which would be outstanding for our emergency response.
I'm just wondering whether we could get state and federal funds to do the necessary upgrades on the airport to make our area more safe in case of a huge emergency, which is pretty much going to happen sometime. Hopefully not in my life.
With both of these projects, yes. Obviously, we're looking to get funding for this fire training facility in every way that we can, including grants, including go to the legislature. One of the things, talking about Blanco, is there was a gas tax on aviation fuel, avgas. That tax, I believe, was 1 cent and 3 cents respectively on the different blends. That funded the Department of Aviation and their upgrades to certain airports. They did Grant County. That was $1 million project over there for their county airport.
Mm-hmm.
That same tax would actually allow them to come into Blanco, spend $1 million, give or take, and just have it upgraded to have that extra runway, the ILS, and so on. There's federal dollars available. There's all sorts of funding streams that can be exploited for it.
Well, I can see this just tying into the fire thing, and I'm wondering if it would help if we could write a letter of support to the governor and in making Cape Blanco a resiliency airport.
It's a federal...
It's not a federal airport, actually.
Right, but I mean, it would be a federal action to make that, the ILS approach and all that would have to be applied for federally, not through the state.
I would still obviously ask for that kind of support. Perhaps we can talk about it later on and come up on a resolution for that. Obviously, with this, I would love to see a resolution of support for this facility.
Sure.
Okay.
Commissioner Boyce?
I just think it ties in with the Cape Blanco Airport very nicely.
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Summer Madison, Jeremy Dumeyer, and I had a hour and a half, maybe hour and 45-minute meeting with John Wilson yesterday morning here in Gold Beach. And Commissioner Gold, we are well on the way to encouraging him, and he has a lot of enthusiasm, as you can verify, for Cape Blanco. And we've asked him, the three of us asked him basically to come up with a strategic plan, which was more or less his idea, but he wanted our support, and if that was the next step in this. So we've gone from the Fire Training Center to Cape Blanco, how that all ties in, which is wise in my view, but we're going to wait, and I think before, if I recall, he essentially committed to maybe the first week in September to have that master plan, one-page executive summary or white paper, whatever the characterization would be, and that's really going to give us a clear direction how to proceed on Cape Blanco as a resiliency airport. And I just, I don't want to speak for you and Ms. Madison, but I thought that was a very productive meeting yesterday, and I don't want to give it too much of expectations, but I think we're really moving on a good path there. So is that your take?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
All right. So do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the resolution for the Rogue Siskiyou Regional Fire and Emergency Training Center.
Proudly second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thanks, you guys, for your work on this. Appreciate it.
Time out.
Commissioner
If I
Boyce.
may. Chief Krieger, did you have anything else that you wanted to add? I'm sorry,
Specifically, if you guys had any more questions on anything, but the overview that Dumeyer did was quite good. It's a 10,000-foot view of the project. There's going to be a ton of small pieces inside of that, as far as business plans, 3D modeling, working with a company called Fire Facilities out of Wisconsin. That's what they do for a living. They build these facilities. They build dynamic shelter rooms for law enforcement. You know, we've got a lot of things there that'll have some finer details as the project moves forward. And like you say, with River Docks, they're working this forward in the phases right now, and where they plan to be, we'll be looking at, our goal is to be breaking ground by 2022, by the end of 2022, with the first phase of the building project. So we'll see how that goes. But right now, the concept is in place. There is a lot more detail than we could put into a meeting here, I would say. We do have the hard copies that we have now edited, and Summer got those done for us. So when we're looking for support from the fire chiefs and these other people around, police chiefs and everybody, they're going to be able to have that piece of paper, like an executive summary or white sheet like you're talking about, as well as the long term, and then also a whole nother piece of paper going through the high points on why that Champion Mill site is the ticket, after we've looked at a number of other places, including at one point Cape Blanco. But the resources out there, the fact that you would have to have a huge water supply, that was one that limited the old Euchre Creek Mill site as well as Cape Blanco. There's just no infrastructure there for water. And then also even with Cape Blanco and Euchre Creek, once we have a large Cascadia event, being able to get there by ground is not likely. So,
Great work, great vision.
Yep.
I think it all ties in.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much.
Yeah, very good. You guys
All
are
right.
great. Thank you.
Moving on to B, support of military and our veteran caregivers. One thing I will say, I've been very proud to be part of NACO. They are very, very interested in our veterans and how they're treated. But they're not only interested in the veterans and the services that are offered to our veterans, they're interested in their families, their wives and children, the husbands of those who have served in combat situations. I actually was very involved in a very intense meeting last month talking about veterans and especially the veterans that had served in lengthy combat situations and what they come home to, but not only what they come home to, but what their families have to go through, what their children go through, what their neighbors go through, and what it takes to care for a veteran. I had the honor of spending some time with a woman named Yasmin Alfonso, who is part of the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, that was founded to help recognize our veteran caregivers, and all it takes to get a veteran up out of bed every morning and everything that is entailed in that, their daily lives, and all the stress and losses that these families face. I want to show you a short video that was put on the Dole Foundation website that was kind of moving for me. It's a brief video, about a 3 or 4 minute video that explains what they're trying to do, and then I'd like to talk a little bit more about this. Okay, JJ. Is there volume? Oh, there.
Well, he's looking
all
old.
around us. There were wounded, ill, injured warriors. Their caregivers were young spouses, the mothers, the dads, the siblings as well. Over those 11 months, we got to know many of them very well. And they were scared. They were really worried. What's going to happen when we leave the hospital? When we're back home, we're alone. They realize they were not trained as caregivers. They are not supported. I have been given a mission. You know, we've seen it, they do something about it. Wake up America. Our nation's leaders must stand with America's military caregivers. Thank you. I realized we needed evidence-based research, and so I commissioned the RAND Corporation. They did a 2-year study and told us there are 5.5 million military and veteran caregivers, providing about $14 billion a year as an unpaid workforce.
My father got really injured in Afghanistan. I'm just learning how to take care of myself. Now I'm responsible for a grown adult.
On the days when my husband's having seizures, I'm of course hands-on. I have to administer medication when he's unconscious. I'm a driver, I'm a cook, I am the bill payer, all of those things, and I'm a mom. I'm a mom and John's wife. As a caregiver, you feel like you are literally carrying a 210-pound man through the days emotionally.
Being in a room with caregivers reminds me of how they taught you to be relentless in the military.
He did his part, and now it's my turn to take over for him.
Our research tells us that a strong, well-supported caregiver is the #1 way to contribute to the health and recovery of a veteran. We've built a coalition of 300-plus national, local, and regional organizations. We've vastly expanded VA services and support for caregivers.
We have more than 150 caregiver fellows representing all the 50 states and Puerto Rico. We make appointments for them on Capitol Hill with congressmen and senators and their staffs, and they storm the hill and they tell their story directly. And they're a great help in terms of getting legislation passed.
I am one voice among many who need consistent and compassionate help as we carry this heavy responsibility caring for our veterans.
We decided to launch the Hidden Heroes campaign to raise awareness of the enormous contributions and challenges of these caregivers. America, these are your hidden heroes. There are millions more.
We've recruited 120 cities, and we're still going across the country to mobilize, educate, and build awareness in home communities for caregivers. We've empowered countless caregivers to be a voice for themselves.
The Elizabeth Dole Foundation has put a face and a name to those who are caring for our wounded, ill, and injured service members. I know I'm not alone. It's a powerful, powerful thing.
The foundation definitely empowered me. I feel like I'm stronger than ever. Kind of like Wonder Woman.
Because of the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, when people think of veterans now, many think of caregiver. How deep is the ocean, or how high is the sky? That's how proud I am of my wife, Elizabeth.
The Foundation's legacy will be a shift in culture, an America where caregivers are empowered, they're appreciated, they're listened to, an America where caregivers are really woven into the very fabric of our nation's appreciation for the military. That's what I want the legacy to be.
And I want to say we all sing our national hymns and we all pledge allegiance to our flag. And we always look at the military veterans and say, thank you for your service. And then we proudly walk away. And that person, their wife, their husband, their mother, their dad, their kids, it's not over for them because they have to go home and they have to face that veteran and help them get out of bed every day, help them with their medications, help them to get to hospitals, to get the proper service that they need. So, you know, declarations are words. It's just a bunch of hyperbole to put a declaration into a county. But by having a declaration to this organization, what it does is it strengthens the Dole Foundation's voice in Washington as counties across this nation right now are doing this today. They are bringing to their boards today to join this organization, and the declaration is that we will support and help all we can our veterans and the caregivers that are behind the scenes that do the work to care for our veterans. It broadens the voice, it strengthens the voice that we have in Washington, and I believe that it will inevitably give better care to our veterans and offer the better services to the caregivers for those veterans. So I applaud the caregivers through this foundation that are nationwide, the ones that have agreed to stand and fight the fight, not just put their loved one in a hospital and say, okay, take care of them. I will stand and do that for my loved one. I applaud them, and I would ask this board to agree with this declaration that we support our, and resolution that we support our veteran caregivers in this county. Commissioner Boyce?
Any chance you're going to get to meet Elizabeth Dole?
I don't know that yet. Being vice chair on this board, it is very humbling. I hope someday I can meet Mrs. Dole and shake her hand for the work she's done on this.
Tremendous honor. I wish you the best on that.
So I make a motion that we support our military and veteran caregiver resolution in Curry County.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold?
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce?
Aye.
Chair Pash?
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Okay, go away. Thanks for helping with that, Council.
Yep.
Next, we have C, our Board of Commissioner meeting schedule for 2019. Ms. Schmelzer?
The board requested to look at a schedule of what changing the meeting schedule would look like, or a calendar of what that would look like. So what you have before you are two calendars. One would, if we would be meeting the first and third Wednesday of the month, and the other calendar would be if we met the first, third, and fourth Wednesdays of the month. So we're just looking for direction on which schedule the board would prefer, if they choose to even change the schedule right now. So right now we are meeting the first, second, and fourth Wednesdays, and we have the third off. So the first schedule you're looking at, like I said, would be the first, third, and fourth, so you're swapping the second and the third week in there for Wednesdays. We would continue to have our meetings in Port Orford and Brookings until the weather changes. And the second one, of course, would be if we went down to 2 meetings a month, still having 2 workshops a month as well, though.
Okay. Commissioner Boyce?
I like it as it is right now. I think we've got a good schedule going. I think we've got quite a workload. I think as we move into 2020, that might change as we catch up the last 2 years. So my preference, Mr. Chair, is to leave it as it is. First, third, and fourth, correct?
We're first, second, and fourth right now.
First, second, fourth, I'm sorry.
We're first, second, and fourth now. We're proposing to make it first, third, and fourth.
Correct.
Okay.
Or,
I'm sorry.
or
Or-
reduce to just twice a month.
Yeah, I thought that, so either way on the last two that you just identified there, but not 2 meetings a month. That's not enough.
Okay. Commissioner Gold?
I'm okay with either. I think in terms of staff time, if we were to have it first and third Wednesdays and be very efficient, I think we could do the 2 meeting a month.
Okay. Well, I personally, I think that we could probably get to 2 meetings a month. I think we will probably do that by fall. I would like to keep it for three meetings a month for a couple of more months anyway, because we are going to be doing the Brookings meeting and then again back to Port Orford again. So that gives us, an away meeting that we don't have to have possibly a full agenda at least for the next couple of months, and then we can readdress this in the fall. But I do agree for staffing and for the costs of it, it may be better to have a full Wednesday meeting twice a month, or a more full Wednesday meeting twice a month, rather than having 3 shorter meetings. So may I have a motion, please, to accept the first, third, and fourth meeting of the month as the one we're going to go with?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that with the stipulation that we revisit this.
Any further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Okay, so we will be going to the first, third, and fourth Wednesday of the month for the next few months anyway.
Beginning in September. We'll complete August the way we have it scheduled right now.
Correct. Thank you. All right, D, Resolution Emergency Housing Declaration. Commissioner Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had some good public comments today. I've got just maybe, I put this up earlier when Mike Burns was talking. This is just a couple of years ago, drawing attention. I think our efforts, though, through all the different local, state, and even some federal groups, that we're not really that well organized. And my long-term vision is that we could actually have an employee here that works on this full-time. And I think that's going to, I think the justification for that is going to be easy to identify and move forward. Here's one, this is a 4-unit complex called a fourplex, just across from Riley Creek North. This family, the Crook family, I've known forever. This has been quite an undertaking for them, but they took the risk. They made the commitment, and this is a fabulous, I just toured it yesterday or day before, facility. But it's only 4 units, and it's high-end, and that helps, but does not solve our problem. So with some of the challenges that they have been faced with on this project, I want to keep them encouraged, because they have had some cost overruns, no fault of theirs, and it's just an indication and an example of what we need to do. We need to inventory. I was talking to folks earlier during break. We need to inventory the available land that we have. That's just one part of this project. I think perhaps the biggest portion of this that I have a concern with is, how do we get developers to keep coming here? How do we, his vision, Herb Crook, his vision is to have some smaller homes in the 90 acres he has here potentially to develop. But he's going to need a little help, not necessarily financially, but he's in his late 60s, Vietnam veteran. I talked him out of his Vietnam hat yesterday, but he's just been, he was the assessor, he was born in Gold Beach. He was a track star here, raised his family here, and then he was 18 years as, I'm drawing a blank, but in the Dalles, the county there, as this assessor. So he just has, of course, tremendous credibility with me. But this is just one example of development that's going on in Curry County, but we need more of that, and at all housing levels. So that's really all I have. I think this is a very valid project for our county. We're lucky to have Director Smelzer, who has had a lot of background in this. We did have just a couple minor mistakes in the original resolution that we sent out, and she quickly took care of those. So if the public has any questions about additional clarification, we'd be glad to certainly work on that. But I think it's a chance to pull the entire community, the entire communities in the county together and say, hey, if we roll up our sleeves and work together on this, we can make a difference. And it affects every part of our culture here, as you know, and it's a big challenge. But we have to be very bold, in my view.
Commissioner Gold?
I received several calls concerning this resolution last evening from people in the unincorporated areas. And people in the unincorporated areas, if you look at the population, they make they are more than 50% of the population in Curry County. So I also listen to David Barnes, and sometimes I think we're crying wolf a little bit by everything being an emergency. So I would kind of like, and not that I don't think that there's a housing problem, there is, but I'm not sure an emergency resolution is the way to go. So I would at least like to put this off so more public could be involved. So I'm not in favor of it today.
Mr. Smelzer?
Yes, Commissioner Boyce talked about a change. I just want to point out in the first whereas, it talks about County Planning Goal 3. That's actually supposed to be Planning Goal 10. So that's the change that is in there. It's just a minor one. Had the wrong chapter cited there. I just want to comment on the part about suspending zoning rules. The resolution does not request us to suspend zoning or get rid of zoning. What it does is it, in effect, would be putting DLCD on alert that we want to propose some things that are basically out of the box, some things that aren't necessarily done in Oregon. Portland was the first city to actually pass an emergency housing declaration for the housing. Josephine County was the first county. We would be the second county. And what that allowed Josephine County to do basically was to do density regulation, cluster development, things that normally are not allowed in Oregon. But by having the emergency declaration in place, they were able to work with DLCD to come up with some unique things that would allow for more development and in a smarter way. Cluster subdivisions, for example, are a way to reduce the amount of roads and utilities needed for development and actually preserves land instead of wasting land like we currently do. It also allowed them to do what people normally call an accessory dwelling unit. Typically are not allowed outside of an urban growth boundary in the state of Oregon. And it allowed them to actually have that ability to have an accessory dwelling unit. It's not called an accessory dwelling unit, but it allowed them to have these type of units outside of urban growth boundaries, provided they did deed restrictions and met certain requirements. The board has scheduled a housing workshop for August 28th, and at that workshop, staff does plan on presenting some of these ideas that can be accomplished by having DLCD basically work with us on these regulations. So we'll be presenting that to the board, and if the board is supportive, of course, then we would proceed with the Planning Commission and follow the regular text amendment process. But there's, it definitely would not suspend zoning. We would not want it to suspend zoning. It's just a way to work with the existing zoning codes and do some unique things normally not allowed.
Okay. Commissioner Gold?
So do you think would be well advised to kind of look at this whole thing before we go ahead and pass it today? I think we need to look at it further in the wording and so forth before we pass it. I really do.
Counsel?
Director Schmelzer, is it okay if I give a couple of comments? So you heard a couple of comments from the public. I'd just like to respond to those a little bit. Mr. Barnes said that he didn't know that this was technically an emergency. The statute says an emergency is a human-created or natural event, so one of those that causes or threatens widespread loss of life or injury to people or property. And it said it includes but is not limited to, and then the statute gives two definitions, a fire, explosion, et cetera. That's not what this is, or a rapid influx of individuals from outside the state, or a rapid migration of individuals. It has this rapidity thing to it. But again, those are just two examples. So that doesn't necessarily mean that our declaration would not qualify as an emergency. But those are two examples. We're neither of those, but it includes but is not limited to. So there's a possibility that the state could, I think someone said that somebody would put this in the trash can upstate or something like that, but there's a possibility they would not. The second thing is that the declarations to the state require us to say we've exhausted our resources and give a preliminary estimate of injuries or deaths. I think we've done a good job outlining the damages. I wasn't sure that the last whereas on the top of the third page or the second page said we exhausted our resources, but it says we believe the infrastructure resources necessary to secure housing is not only an obtainable goal, but for families within the county. So I think that was what we were trying to say there. And then lastly, with respect to some of the people saying the land use, Director Schmelzer, I think, correctly points out, and you really need to, people were, I hate to always say when people say things are out of context, but I think when one person spoke, they focused on one particular phrase of this, saying suspend and limiting rules. So that's in the last, that's in the resolution, and it basically is a two-part resolution when you read it. It's a one paragraph, and it basically says that we direct money to ensure an adequate number of resources are created and made available to house all residents. And it says a focus on children, family, and veterans. And then it says planning and development processes be revised to encourage development. And I've heard some, again, Director Schmelzer correctly pointed out that this resolution itself is not revising or suspending anything. It calls for the further public process that she identified in the land use role. So I don't want people to think that this is an action that would be suspending it. It's directing work to be done to do those things, and Director Schmelzer indicated that we'd be working with the state and DLCD, which is a classic Oregon land use process. So with that understanding, I don't think we're doing that. And it says that we address adequacy of existing housing. And then it's the second one, the Board of Commissioners, the second sentence of the paragraph, they're just two long sentences. The Board of Commissioners further resolves to request by this resolution that Governor Brown make a declaration and provide assistance to help with all of these things, as well as suspending and limiting rules. So that request would be by someone else, and they would have to look at this and agree with it. So, and then Mr. Barnes said, be careful what you wish for. Somebody may kind of take over and start telling us what to do. And I think there's a possibility that sometimes if the state does come in and start taking action, they might send us a bill. But I don't think we're contemplating that. So again, and we can always cross that bridge when we come to it. So that was just my legal analysis of some of the comments being made from the public.
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you. Council Huddle, thank you for that clarification. Very helpful. Again, I'm going to thank Director Schmelzer for the insight and the work on this, the heart to recognize that we have a serious problem in this county. Mr. Chair, the key, in my opinion, is getting to the urban representatives in the Oregon legislature. And they are starting to get it, slowly but surely after all these years. What stops us from having more homes at all price ranges available in this county? Land use planning. One size fits all. Many will make the argument that does not work for certain rural areas. We have so little land available in Curry County to build. But the portions we do have, we're not able to get through on a rational basis. The citizens suffer, in my opinion. So we want to prolong this or delay this. The 2.5 years I've been here, that's the biggest frustration I've had, is inaction, paralysis, and something as simple as this is saying, state of Oregon, Coos County, Josephine County, citizens of our county, we're starting to figure it out. Maybe we knew it 2 or 3 years ago. Doesn't matter. Will you come on board? Will you help us? Or are we just going to throw up our hands, kick the can down the road and go, well, we need to get more people involved. This is the first step to getting more people involved. I'm really asking for unanimous consent and approval on this today. Is the smartest thing we can do, the best thing we can do? Is it perfect? No. But it's a start to getting attention around the state, helping other counties that are in similar negative situations. We want to bring people here for the best law enforcement, the best health care, seniors as part of our economic development, moving here and retiring here, the best possible culture that we can create. This is a start. We need middle-income housing. We need affordable housing. We got to get off our butts and get it done. Thank you, in my view.
No, not right now. Thank you. I think we've had enough comment on this for now. We'd like to move forward if we can. I want to go through this line by line if I can on a couple of topics. The Johnson Foundation says that 17% of housing in the county is a severe housing problem. Severe housing problems are defined as overcrowding or high housing costs. And I'll stop with that because I want to disagree with the median gross rent at $856 here. I think the median gross rent, I think that's severely understated. I know of people that have one-bedroom apartments in this county that are paying well in excess of $1,000. Another concern for me is the lack of complete facilities in a rental unit in this county, which is one of the reasons that I so strongly ask for code enforcement and have a loud voice for even another code enforcement officer in this county. Another problem that I see in the county is that we have a lot of safety codes that are not followed, and the mobile home and the mobile homes that are in this county, as we all know as we drive around, some of them are severely distressed. So I want to say I think the housing issues in this county are actually even worse than most of us are willing to agree. Kind of a funny, pointed-eared old guy in a movie once said that the needs of the many far outweigh the needs of the few. And I think listening to stories of sheriff's deputies living in their cars, having mothers come in knocking at my door on my ranch asking if they can pitch a tent on my property with their 3 children. They can afford a home, they just can't find one. To listen to some of the stories around the county of the distressed situation of so many of the properties in this county because they either don't have the wherewithal to fix those properties and or they become so distressed and uninhabitable that they're a public health hazard, yet families are still having to live in them because they don't have another place to be able to go. I will say that economic growth, our county has outgrown the middle level income to lower level income housing in this county. We lose extremely talented people on an annual basis, many and many of them. I've spoken to the hospital, I've spoken with businesses down in Brookings. That we can't bring people in because we don't have adequate housing to bring them into. The housing short, I would say in my estimate, and this is only my estimate, we could build 200 homes in this county right now, or 200 housing units, and still have a shortage of affordable housing. But what that does do is it starts to drive the price down. Having all the VSBOs and the B&Bs and all that we have in this county, I forget what the percentage of that was here. It was a huge percentage. We've lost so many rental units, affordable rental units, because people are choosing to do a vacation rental, turn their properties into vacation rentals, that it has driven the price in this county of properties up. So I think, declaring a housing emergency, do I say it's an actual emergency? That may be a strong word. But I think what this declaration does is it brings not only more attention to what we have in this county, it will hopefully turn some eyes in Salem, but it will also possibly open up HUD money. It will open up some money for veterans. I know that in speaking with some people in NACO a few weeks ago, there is money out there for veterans housing, and by having declarations like this, again, I know that it may not be in everyone's thinking that it be an emergency declaration. And again, I think emergency for me might be a strong word, but I do agree with most of the writing in here, actually all of the writing in this declaration, that we do have a severe housing shortage. And it's not only the housing shortage, but it's the clean, healthy, habitable housing that we offer our kids in this county. And, you know, my mom used to always say, we can be poor, but we can be clean poor. Some of the properties in this county, I mean, the trailers, I've been in a few trailers that I'm sorry, I would be hard to let my pets stay in there, and people are living there with their kids. So that's my comment on it. Again, I would just say for economic development, paying our bills, we need to find ways, because we've got talented people that want to come into this county and work, and to find better ways to do that, possibly through this declaration as a move forward for me. That's all I have. Briefly, Mr. Palmer.
I was happy to hear Ms. Schmelzer and Mr. Huddle say that the intent is not to, quote, suspend rules. My only question is that since it's not, you drop that from the resolution, because that's what it now says.
It's a request.
So please, no, it says suspend. So please do that. The other comment I'd like to make is that you have a great housing plan, stick to it. It says nothing about this issue of rural areas of the county. It's all about working family housing, affordable housing within urban growth boundaries. And all of the issues you talk about here, to me, apply to that, not to the rest of the county. And so I urge you to focus on those areas, and having this kind of reform and important work be done within the urban growth boundaries, rather than opening that up to issues that would require changes in the zoning of a really major type.
Thank you, sir. And I'm sad to see Miss Hidalgo seemed a little upset and left. I just had some thoughts on my mind that I wanted to say first. I wish she would have stayed. I would have allowed her comment. So do I have a motion, please?
I'll move, Mr. Chair, that we accept, adopt, approve this resolution.
I have a second? I'll second. Further discussion?
I'm still going to say I think we need to postpone this just a bit so we can make sure that the wording is right and people who have opposition to it have a chance to speak to it, or support, either one.
Well, I think by being posted on the county's website, anyone, as we can see, that had opposition or comments on it is here. Council huddle, so that the... good.
That's not true. It's not on the agenda.
Yes, it
It's not
is.
on the agenda.
Yes, it is. And we
I'm
had it
on the
posted.
county website, and it is on the county website. Yes, it is, sir. So, council, so that our constituents in the county are comfortable, have you looked at and/or helped in the writing of this and/or approved it as to its wording?
I reviewed it, and you've received my comments. And again, Mr. Palmer says again that it acts to suspend it, but I interpret the second sentence of the resolution part, the last paragraph. It says, the Board of County Commissioners further resolves to request by this resolution that Governor Kate Brown, and then it lists several things they're asking her to do: declare a 24-month state of emergency, consider Curry County an emergency area as provided in 401-165, provide assistance to help with availability, adequacy, and affordability of housing, and to suspend limiting rules which prevent housing in the unincorporated area. So it's the Board of Commissioners is not suspending the rules by this resolution. They're asking the governor to consider our request for that.
Okay, and you're comfortable with the wording of this document, sir?
As I've described, I think it can be interpreted to comply with the emergency statutes. It's somebody else's job, I think the state governor's job, to make that interpretation. But
Thank you. Commissioner Boyce, did you have another comment?
I just want to say thanks for your eloquent representation of the hurting people in this county. And it is real. Perfect is the enemy of good. This is not a perfect program, but it's a start, and we can refine it as we move forward and make a difference. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
I'm going to have to vote no for now.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried 2-1.
All right, moving on next, E is a forensic audit. I would like to say firstly, on my opening comment on this, again, I would like to thank Mr. Barnes. Sir, your continued support in this county, even though I know that we don't always agree on everything. I am honored to know you, and I appreciate so much your work in this county and your continued investigation of everything in the county, not only with things that are happening in this building, but your notice of things in the county and all the work you do. And I also am proud to know you, sir, because you are a worker, and I always respect workers. So I will say that after our last meeting, I had talked to Ms. Schmelzer. We have had a new finance director come in to head up our finance office, HR, and everything to do with the bill paying of the county. And we hope to work and have a long relationship with Charlene, I'm sorry. A lot going on up here today. But anyway, we, after speaking with you a few times and, your concerns to me on some areas, I had asked Mr. Barnes, who is a certified certified internal auditor, to come in and just brief through some areas that you may have. After doing so, he gave his comments to me, and at this time, I don't think we need to move forward with a forensic audit. Should there be some things that come forward that you find, I would ask you to bring them to the board, and then we can move forward from there. That's all I have on that. All right, F is a wage study. Ms. Schmelzer?
Yes, we discussed this, or I mentioned this briefly at the last meeting, and Sherilyn from Finance and HR is here to talk about this as well. Basically, what we have is the county has not looked at their wage, their job descriptions and the salary tables for quite some time. And I think it is critical that we do try to make sure our job descriptions and the wages are competitive, so we do attract the best talent that we possibly can. We know housing is an issue, but so are the wages. And I think that we would, not only will we attract better talent, I think it's good for morale. I also think it avoids costly processes such like we see with the union sometimes, if we had updated wage schedules. So, Charlene, do you want to just talk briefly about the last time we had a wage schedule and what's involved with looking at a new wage schedule and the costs that would be involved with that?
Yes, and if I can just take a little detour, as a new employee of the county and the responsiveness of this commission to make sure that things are running well and be so proactive in all the things that are going on, I really feel privileged to be part of your team, and I thank you for that. And the time that you gave me with Mr. Barnes was confidence building and alleviated a lot of concerns, and I thank you for that. That was above and beyond, and it was very much appreciated. With regards to the wage study, one of the items that you guys have asked me to take care of is human resources, and to expand and promote that department and really get the public aware of what it's like to work for Curry County and to put our best foot forward. And I know just from the short time that I've been with you, you have a lot of members that are trying so hard to make changes in the county, and a very proactive commission. We have a director that's offering the backbone and the structure, and she's a catalyst for each individual's ideas and the safeguards that are by our council, and then, your support team is just a charming group of people to work with. But to put that out there, we need to be able to show that we're competitive. Not just Curry County, but we know that we get a lot of medical professionals here, and then we lose them. The wages here are lower. I have people that I know personally that were looking at moving to this area, and the competitiveness for the market just isn't there. And so that needs to be seasoned with our dynamics of our region. So we can't compete with larger communities that have a deeper infrastructure, and they're able to offer higher wages. Their turnover and their community needs are higher, so they have that revenue stream. But Curry County is an awesome place to work for, and the wage study would allow us to add a market competitive wage at a regionally appropriate level, so that we could offer the best services to our citizens and they can get the most effective quality that we offer from that. And that's probably something that needs to be done from a professional team, someone that's trained in merging all of the dynamics of that within a region and the market that could provide that for us. It has been since 2002 based on the staff there in my office since the last market was done, and the federal government and legislative changes, state legislative changes have changed the regulations and rules about how those classification studies are done and how raises between steps and across the board for employees are equalized. And those were just changed January 1st of this year. They were implemented. They need to be in place. And so allowing us the opportunity to do a professional wage study would allow us to put our best foot forward, make it regionally appropriate, and then draw in the candidates for the type of things that you as a commission are pursuing for our community.
Would the wage study be done through LGPI, or is that a separate company that would do the study?
That decision...
And the costs associated with that?
Yeah, that decision hasn't been made yet. We're still talking about it. We would probably go out for public bids. It is under the $10,000, so we could do that. However, Director Schmelzer feels is appropriate. But I'm suggesting that we reach out a little bit more for someone that's involved in the state in doing those things within the communities and the regions that are already within Oregon to see who we can get to do that.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner.
Are there grants available for this process?
There is, because it has to do with economic development, and it also has to do with the community's stability and the local governments. There are several opportunities for that. I don't have a list of any of them to provide you right now. Another idea might be, just as out-of-the-box suggestion, sorry I haven't discussed this before, but have we considered utilizing our university students that are pursuing degrees in that area? There are a lot of choices for us that we can make the decision for, but there is a cost there that would be associated with doing a professional study that we're recommending is actually needed instead of doing it internally.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I will make a motion that we proceed to have a wage study, to put out for bid, a wage study.
Okay, the way that the order was written, that the agenda routing slip was written would be, we're requesting the commissioners to approve it up to $5,000. So if it would go over $5,000, we would want to bring it back and see what we want to do. But that, of course, doesn't require competitive bids because it's under our threshold, but we would want to look at LGPI and, at least a couple others to see what we're going to get for that price. I know Charlene we were discussing, she had some contacts at the state that might be able to give us some other comparatives too, so.
We did get a contact from Boley when I was doing the research for that, and they had a suggestion with a company that the state uses. And that's why I was suggesting one that is used to Oregon and that could be done internally. They know our markets and our areas, and Curry County is a unique demographic, and we want it to be wage appropriate.
So moved.
I think competition is always good. I'll second it.
Further, Commissioner Boyce?
That includes,
discussion?
So your motion included the 5,000?
The 5,000, yes.
Thank you.
Any further comment? Commissioner Gold seconded. Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, we have G, appoint Tourism Promotion Committee member to the North County position.
Okay, this would be our final appointment for the Tourism Promotions Committee. Oh, I'm sorry.
August 28th will be the final appointment.
August 28th would be the final appointment? Okay. Why is that, JJ?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is for Diane. Never mind.
Yeah, so on our, we've got a couple appointments going on. We've got a lot of vacancies at the current time. And JJ, thank you for always promoting them and putting them in the paper. With this one, this would be the Tourism Promotion Committee. We needed one more North County position. We did have somebody apply. That is in your packet. We're looking for you to approve that and then also to give us a term for that position, for that person.
I will vote. We have Ms. Schofield for 12/31/23.
I'll second that.
Further discussion?
I just have one more comment.
Yes, ma'am.
That I'd like to bring. So I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce our, the person who's going to be working with the Tourism Promotions Committee and doing our TLT and our business license program, and that is Miranda. Miranda, if you just want to wave real quick. So,
Hi, Miranda.
She's been going through and creating the data list so far for these programs, and she'll be actually, we've had some questions from some of these members when they're going to start meeting. They'll actually start meeting in September, and Miranda will be meeting with them.
Okay.
Welcome.
So we have a first motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, next is I, for Sint.
For Sint, we have talked about this before. As you know, we recently got a grant from $12,500 from All Care to help with this program. So the sheriff worked with Coos County, specifically the Sint program, and to get an updated intergovernmental agreement for the services. We had one, but it was very outdated. So John was working with one, Sheriff Ward was working with Coos County on that, and Council Huddle has approved the agreement. The sheriff did get it to me yesterday afternoon to ask if we could approve it today. I did email it. I do have printed copies here. I just wanted to share it with you to see if we can approve it today. It's basically just covers everything we've talked about earlier about how this is the South Coast Interagency Narcotics Team out of Coos County, and what they do is they help us with narcotics, big stings, busts, tracking down criminals, also education to help prevent narcotic use. And this is something we've done with them. Like I said, we used to give them money. We haven't for the last couple of years, and therefore our agreement has also been out of date, and we didn't have a current agreement. So this would just make it all clear across the board that they're willing to help us for X amount of dollars, and this will just automatically renew annually until we terminate it.
I happened to be in conversation with our sheriff last week, and Sint was actually here, and they did an action here last week. They were, I believe, if I'm correct, they were also involved in the sweep we had a few months ago of the sex offenders that had not registered in the county and or were that had continuing issues. So Sint has been very helpful to our sheriff's department in conversations with John Ward. He has expressed a need for this organization and what they offer the county. So I would move that we, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
That's okay. Just quickly, I just want to let that soak into the public a little bit. South Coast Interagency Narcotics Team, working with Coos County, just can't say enough how the kind of confidence that gives me. Interagency, and their effectiveness. Thank you for getting this on the agenda today. Good work. And so yes, Mr. Chair, I'll second your motion, or if you want to repeat that motion.
Just as is written.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, next we have J, which is the appointment, Ms. Schmelzer of Commissioner Boyce.
Yes, I received an email yesterday, and it is from the Community Engagement Coordinator for Advanced Health. And they wrote us to see if we would appoint Commissioner Court Boyce to their Advanced Health Curry CAC. They did say, I'd explained to them we don't need board approval for that type of stuff, but their rules do require board approval. So if we can get that on this agenda, or, if we can approve that today, good. If not, we'll just push it back to August 28th. But they're just looking for board approval to appoint Commissioner Boyce to their CAC.
Okay. So moved. I'm sorry, Commissioner Boyce.
This is, they send a lot of funds through Curry Community Health to our county. It's got an excellent board. This is the first time a position at the county level has been open for some time. So I'm honored to be considered for this and would appreciate board support on this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'll move that we appoint Commissioner Boyce to Advanced Health's board.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes?
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, next we have 7, the Director's Report. Ms. Schmelzer.
I don't have anything.
All righty. Commissioner updates. Commissioner Boyce.
You're not waiting for me that day. I will have nothing to report.
We are waiting
What
for
are you
that day.
smiling about? I have several things, but it won't take too long. We mentioned the Oregon Department of Aviation meeting yesterday, and also met with them a month ago at Cape Blanco, and thanks for your input on that as well. That is a sleeping asset that, under the right circumstances, subject to county support and approval, could really be a benefit to this county, not just in an emergency management, various capacities, but just have a lot of hope. That's it. And you heard emergency management coordinator Dumeyer mention 18 feet when the Navy built that. That's so it can support, so the public knows, for those that may not be aware, so it can support incredibly heavy aircraft. So that's going to be there for a long time. It's a solid foundation, a solid program. Side note, I had a 2-hour conference call yesterday with Supervisor Merv George, all of his district rangers, some ODF, Oregon Department of Forestry people. One other county commissioner was Colleen Roberts, who is planning to go to Washington, D.C. We're going to be, and I'm going to go subject to board approval, which I can mention that, by the way. I'm going to be purchasing my own airplane tickets, and so I'll come to the board with lodging, maybe some meals, and that'll be the next meeting. But the reason we're going, I'll have a full report on that. We're going to be meeting with the Department of Agriculture, second under, and through the Forest Collaborative program, a lot of money can come back to the counties in this region for the long-awaited hazardous fuels reduction. And I'm promoting with everything I got that we start at the roads, get the roads open, go on each side of the road. I mean, we're talking about potentially the 200,000 or 300,000 acres that's prime Siskiyou National Forest, Kalmiopsis wilderness that hasn't burned yet, and the part that we can get into the roads and make that happen and have better safety for the firefighters for future fires. On our program there for the Rogue Siskiyou Regional Fire Training Center, one of the things I put out that Ms. Madison and Director Schmelzer helped me with was the 6 major fires in the last 22 years. That total acres lost, obviously some of it's been reburned, that total amount of acres lost is just under 900,000. And that's just the 6 major fires in those 22 years. So that's the message we want to go back to Washington with, and of course all the related issues to that. So the phone conference we had yesterday, we've got support to bottom line rebuild our forest and stop the mega fires. Again, understanding sometimes normal fires are healthy. That's not where we're at, so we're very optimistic on this meeting. I'll be meeting with an ODOT representative on Monday. I'll give you a report later on that. I have an issue and a concern back to Southwest Oregon Community College, and I sent out Dr. Doug's Bunn, an email yesterday morning. I've not got a response yet. He's put together an advisory committee, and I'm just really surprised, Mr. Chair, that you were passed up for that with the amount of work you've done on this. So I'm uncomfortable with that. Commissioner Gold has been appointed. There's been some other people that were passed up that were serving with me on the original advisory committee. Two quite noteworthy, in my opinion, was Peggy Gergen and Alan Nidifer, and there were others. And so this $1 million issue and concern we have for the taxpayers of this county, I don't know enough about this committee yet, nor were you notified of this appointment or these appointments on anything?
No, I was not.
Okay. So the reason I asked that, Mr. Chair, is because I just like I was approved for the Advanced Healthcare Board, I think we need to approve any board from this point on. And so I think that might even deserve future board or agenda attention. And the reason, I'd love to be on that advisory committee. I think you're the logical person. It wouldn't matter to me. I know you would have fierce attendance. And in the interest of the taxpayer expenditures that are going out in that, I've been basically neutral on this. I had a very good relationship with Dean Balsinger, and I've worked hard to have a good relationship with Mr. Bunn. However, at that meeting we had down there, I thought you were cut short, and I was surprised at that in your presentation, and they didn't want to hear my letter that I read from, or at least the board president didn't want to hear the letter I was going to read. It did read from the veteran that basically was saying we need to do more marketing from the SWAC level. So this thing is heating up, and I just want to move slowly, and I want to know what the plan is from the Board of Commissioners and support. And maybe I have my information wrong. I'm anxious to hear from Mr. Bunn, but I want to know what is the objective of that committee and why you or I were passed up on that. In the interest of balance, sir. Yeah, that's all I have today. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Gold.
Let me address Commissioner Boyce. This is an ad hoc committee. It's not an advisory committee with SWAC. I did attend the ad hoc committee. It's community members, anybody that wants to come. Nobody was appointed. And they are coming up with seminars that are of interest to the community, which I thought was a very good idea, and those seminars are going to be starting in September. So this was no big official thing. I attended it as being the liaison to the education of this county. So I wanted to know what was going on. There was no appointment, no dissing of anybody simply because they were not appointed, because there were no appointments.
No dissing of anybody, you said?
This is comments. This is comments.
Okay.
Okay, so anyway, I did attend that meeting. A lot was done. Community members have come and gone. There were about 10 people there. It's just an ad hoc committee to help come up with seminars, actually, and they're going to be weekly seminars starting in September. Things that are of interest to the community, and they will be well publicized. So I don't see any reason why either of you couldn't go to some of those meetings. There's not going to be one this week, but they're going to be on Thursdays, 2:30. It had nothing to do with money or any of that. So also, I just wanted to correct some mistakes that were put out there about the SWAC thing. It was stated that scholarship monies went into the general fund. So I checked on that further because my antenna went up. That didn't make sense. And what happens is there is a scholarship foundation
the money goes into the foundation, and people who donate to that could stipulate that they wanted Curry County students to receive those scholarships if they so desired, or students with certain specifications, like if they had to have a GPA of 4.0 or whatever, they could stipulate that, or an area that they're studying in. So I think that needed to be corrected, and I think SWOC is trying to move in the right direction as far as including community members to come up with some curriculum and so forth that community is interested in. So that's my report. Thank you.
Well, I'll continue with the SWOC theme, just because it's been brought up now. I'll move that to my front. I met with Dr. Bunn several months ago. It was actually about a month after I was elected, and spoke with him about a lot of the things that we are speaking about now. And it's disheartening to me that after that meeting, nothing moved forward with the college wanting to now meet with people and start to look at their curriculum and start to look at their budget and the things that are going on in the college, until we had a formal request through this board. I understand that this board has no say over what SWOC does in their college. I fully understand that. And I appreciate that they have finally come to the table and said, you know what, the eyes are on us now, so we need to do something. Hopefully it's not just because the eyes are on them, but it is heartfelt from them. I will say, though, I have not had a response to the letter that this board asked them to plan a meeting with us. I have had no response to that. I don't know if Ms. Schmelzer or anyone else in the offices has. I would hope that they would do that. I do not look forward to a continuing action against the school. However, I will not relent on this with the tax dollars that are being spent at this college, and how the money is being spent. I think we need to address this, and I would again ask them to please contact us and to sit down with us and answer some questions that we have, and hopefully we can resolve the issues. As for the comment on donations to the college, I don't think I would ask for the amount or the monies and how they were dispersed to any particular student. I think the question that I had on that was, how much grant money was there or private donations, and just was it spent, how much was donated from Curry, earmarked for Curry, and if it wasn't earmarked for Curry, how much stayed in Curry versus went to Coos County. I will be meeting with Commissioner Cribbins on Monday to discuss some of the things, questions that we have, and open a conversation with Coos County on this as well as some other topics. I'd also like to comment on Congressman DeFazio. I, again, was in contact with his office this morning. I didn't have a chance to tell you yet, Mr. Barnes, but Chris Pratt from his office and I had a couple of communications this morning. The congressman is looking to move forward with this. He will be here, I believe it's next weekend. I'll be having breakfast with him, and the other two commissioners are invited to come as well.
27th, 28th.
Yes, and then he will also be here for 3 town halls. So I'm sure we will be addressing this. And then I would like to do a short presentation to him on the videos from the river and some comments from this board and some other people. If you'd like to be at that, I didn't know if you knew that he was going to be here. I'm hopeful that the port of Gold Beach and the port of Brookings Harbor, their entire boards will be at least one of those meetings so that we can discuss the actual true issues that are faced not only here in the Rogue River, but in the South County as well. So
When is that meeting?
27th and 28th, I believe, are the 2 days.
Well, I mean the specific meeting that you're going to be talking about the ports.
I think it's the 27th is the one in Gold Beach. Will be the one I'm
Are
going
you
to...
talking town halls or?
Yes.
Okay.
And then there's one on the 28th in Brookings. And I believe they're also doing one in Port Orford as well. I'm not certain on that, though.
If more than one member is going to attend, we'll have to post those as meetings. So if other commissioners think they're going to go, let me know.
Actually, we were all invited to the breakfast,
That's right.
and I don't think that's a decision-making thing, so is that okey-dokey with
Yeah,
you, council?
yeah, it'll just be casual conversation.
Yeah,
That's all
that's
it'll be.
okay.
Okay.
There will be no decisions made.
Sure, and then in case there's ever a question, the board can simply cure it by discussing everything at the next duly noticed public meeting that we conduct. So I would recommend that you, take good mental notes or notes and disclose the content of the discussions at your next meeting after that.
Okay.
I am going to, but you're still on commissioner comments, so I'll just wait.
No,
But
I'm not.
I had questions for, you are.
Just a couple more minutes.
Good,
yeah.
thank you.
Actually, you know what? That was it, just to talk about the DeFazio. And I would like to commend DeFazio, Congressman DeFazio's office. Chris has been very good at getting back to us. And she again asked me this morning if Department of Transportation had gotten a hold of me, because they're not even asking the Corps, which will be at the meetings next week, just so you know, the Corps will be there as well. But they're going to the Department of Transportation to try and get some resolutions to this quicker. So that's all I have.
Wednesday, 9 a.m., the 28th in Brookings.
So, thank you. And then Director Schmelzer had no comments on her report, but we did talk about one topic today, was the emergency housing resolution. And during that, it was mentioned that there will be a housing meeting on the 28th, or
Housing workshop.
housing workshop. And then we have an evening meeting in Brookings on the 28th?
Yes.
Okay. And then are we having a meeting next week?
So there's no meeting next week.
Okay.
So that's our normal third week that we would
Yep.
not be off. And then that last week, yes, we have our normal workshop. This one's dedicated solely to housing.
That's at 2 p.m. here?
2 p.m.
Okay,
And then the
thanks.
one in Brookings, so this will be our first one in Brookings, and that one we actually, I sent an email out on that, but just to verify, it's scheduled for 6 to allow us a little more time. Last time we had a workshop and then a meeting in Port Orford, there was a little bit scrambling there to get up there, so this gives us a little bit more time. Thank you.
Good, okay, thanks. it seemed like housing got a lot of people to the board, and I thought it would be good to mention that again. And the meeting in Brookings at 6 is on our website, but I didn't see the notification of the housing meeting on our website, so at least it might, not yet. Okay, good, it'll be, thanks, sorry.
All right.
So those are some things.
Is that it? All right, at this,
Sorry, one more thing. I know Director Schmelzer says she's going to be gone from this Friday the 16th all through next week. Is that correct? And then
That's correct.
I was hoping to take this Friday off. I don't know what the board's needs are going to be this Friday. If we're not having a meeting next week, it makes it pretty light. And then also next Tuesday, I have an appointment out of town, so I'll be gone this Friday and Tuesday as well. Again, sorry for the
I'll
interruption.
cover for you.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyce. Appreciate that.
all right, so at this time, we're going to enter into executive session, ORS 192-.660, to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection, and ORS 192-6602H, to consider or to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. So
Will we also be considering employment of a public officer or agent?
Yes, we will.
Okay, thank you. So that's the other reason. Thank you.
All right, and so at this time, we're going to go into recess on our normal meeting, and we will reconvene after executive. Back in our regular BOC meeting, and we are after executive session, we will move forward with B and C to approve. May I have a motion, please?
I move that we approve the new hire of the District Attorney's Office Department Specialists and the transfer of economic development, and get an economic development assistant, hire that person.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion? Roll, please.
Mr. Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
And then from the rest of our executive session, council is asked to proceed as directed from the executive session And this meeting, with nothing further, is adjourned.